All right, today some of you will be finishing up your Angry Birds probably earlier than others today. So if you get done with your Angry Birds, I want to go on to the next project. That way you can start working on that one. So our next project is going to be tracking. So I close that folder. Shane, you can grab one of those submission forms. Middle. There you go. So this one is going to be, basically it's going to be camera tracking. We'll have this one due April 4th. You can grab one of those middle sheets. It's going to be a simple project. The easiest thing with this one, or the most difficult thing with this one, is actually just putting the artwork or creating the artwork that's going to be going around these places. After Effects is going to do a lot of the stuff for us, which is going to be amazing. Okay, but it's important to see these processes. So for the description here, we'll be tracking a camera from a video, and integrating graphics into it. For our learning objectives, we'll be tracking a camera. And what that means is when you videotape something, obviously you videotaped it with a camera. We need to reverse that information so that we can actually get that camera information in After Effects. So that, let's say I drew my Angry Bird and I want him to be on a desk in a video that's moving around. I need to track the camera so that I can put the Angry Bird on the desk, so that as my camera moves, my Angry Bird still stays on the desk. It doesn't just like float around with the camera. Okay, you'll see once we actually do it. So tracking a camera will be one thing. Integrate at least 3 graphic/design items into the scene. And that's pretty much it for this one. Yeah. Like I said, this is going to be a kind of a quickish one. All right. Turn-ins, project folder, and the essentials. So this should be your file, your movie, and any artwork. Thank you. Gotta remember which class I'm in. All right, so our end resolution will be 960 by 540. The time is going to be really kind of open depending on which video you choose. I have a whole series of videos you can kind of pick through and find which one you want to use for that. So basically something that's long enough to make sense. Okay, so if it's 1 second, that's not enough time. If it's 35 seconds, that's way too long. Okay, so find something that's a good amount of time to kind of show it off. Basically anything between probably 7 seconds or 4 seconds and like 10 seconds is a good amount of time. Okay, so if you want to put that between 4 and 10 seconds. You could also shoot your own video too. So if you decide, hey, I want to grab a different piece of footage than you've provided, that's totally cool with me. I'll show you the kind of footage that I have, and then you can make sure that yours is kind of on the same bar as that one. Okay. Points possible is 8. Any questions on the sheet? No. Cool. Simple sheet. All right. so I'm going to start off with this one just like we've started off with all the other ones by duplicating that template project and then renaming it tracking and tracking. Oops. On Canvas, I have a link that goes to all of my folders. So I have, it's called 2560, but it has basically all of these folders that are inside here, and you can go into the 2D tracking one if you want. You can go into the banner removal folder if you want. You can go into camera tracking if you want. Any of these folders have videos inside them. I'm using them for my compositing class 2, where we're using this in a different program called Nuke, but same kind of thing. Okay, it's important to see both of these because if all you have is After Effects, you need to see how to do it in After Effects. If you have Nuke, Nuke is a better choice. There's also some drone footage inside here too. If it plays, there it goes. Oh, it's thinking. There it goes. Okay, and obviously you want to find something that's a exciting shot. This thing just kind of rising is not terribly exciting of a shot. All right, so you'll go through first and just kind of like browse around and look at all the videos. I would definitely recommend maybe downloading them versus trying to play them off the internet because that's definitely not going to work. Some of these videos are GoPro footage, so like this one here is a piece of GoPro footage. One of the issues that you'll have with it is this. See how distorted that is there? I would recommend not using anything that has a lot of distortion to it. Avoid using these ones inside After Effects. It's possible. It's workable. Just I would avoid it for especially your first ones. Okay? And then nothing in the still match. That's nothing we're doing there. Nothing in there. All right. Let's see. That one's a bit too dark. Find something with good lighting too, right? I think I'm going to go with the drone footage here. There it goes. Not that one. Nope, that's going backwards. I don't like that. There's one that I found in here before that I really liked. Like that one I like. I just like that camera turn that it does right here. That. Cool. So that's the one I'm going to use. So DJI 0026. So I'm just going to copy that one image and put it into my folder. When you turn your stuff in, do not turn in all the movies. I do not want all the movies. Tracking. So that goes into my movies folder, and then I'm just going to open up my template project. That's not it. There. Cool. All right, and I'm going to bring that footage in. This is the worst thing about any computer program. It's every time it's just going back and doing the same exact thing. There we go. Okay. So all of these videos that I'm providing are 1280 by 720, all the ones that I've shot. The drone footage Yosi shot, and this one is actually, if you look at the resolution here, 3840 by 2160. So that resolution is a lot higher than obviously we want to work with. The bigger your footage size, the slower it's going to go, okay? So 3840 by 2160 is huge. I want to shrink that down. So I'm going to drag this to a new composition. I said we wanted to work at 960 by 540, so I'm just going to reset this to 960 by 540. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to scale this down to fit. Now, it may not fit perfectly. It's getting close. Right there. I think that should be sufficient. You do not want to go too far in, or in at all like this, because then you have this black space, and After Effects will think that you're trying to track that. So maybe even 25%. Yeah, it looks like 25% is perfect. So I will go 25%. All right. So I need to track the footage. Now, before I track it, I cannot do it in this composition because what After Effects is going to do is it's going to unscale this and try to track that. I don't want that. I want to make sure it's considering it flat. So I pre-compose it, I move all my settings, and I just say footage. Okay? So now this is basically just a locked-in version of my footage. So there's a couple different ways that we can track. Over here on the right is a tracker. We're not going to use the basic settings for this. I'm going to show it under the effects menu or under the animation. But there is a track motion one, which basically I can track one point. So let's say I want to track the stop sign. I put my little box, the small box around the stop sign, and then I say go ahead. And then what it does is it tracks that stop sign and figures out how that stop sign is moving. So if I want to replace that stop sign with something else, it would definitely do it. The problem with this is that once the stop sign is gone, it kind of freaks out. Okay, so right there it's good, but now it's like tracking something else. Okay, so we're not going to use that one. Reset. There we go. We're going to use the track camera one. Now, the footage, before I do this, let me get rid of the tracker on here. There we go. Before I start tracking this, my footage is like 15 seconds long. Like I said, our footage should be about, what, 4 to 10 seconds is what I said. So we should kind of crop it to about 4 to 10 seconds of a good footage before we try tracking it, because we may end up with only 3 seconds of good footage or, you know, not enough. So like right here, this is a bad spot to track because there's nothing happening. Okay, I want to find something where the camera is actually moving, and I like this pan that happens right about here. A little bit further up. Are you updating or what? Come on. There it goes. Let me make sure that's off. Yes. I'm going to set this to half. Maybe it'll update a little bit quicker. There you go. Actually, right there is fine. I can go all the way to that. So I'm going to just do this first 4 seconds. So I'm going to crop this again. Set my trim my comp to the work area. There we go. And I'll just use this first bit where we're doing that. Alright, that'll work. Okay. So now I'm going to track the camera. So you can click this track camera button there. Or I can go under layer. Where did they put it? No, sorry. Animation, track camera. There it is. And what this is going to do is, just like that little box that was around the stop sign, this is going to create 100 boxes all over this entire thing. And it's basically going to try to find anywhere there's contrast in this image and follow the movement of it. So right here where this sign is, it's going to try to follow the movement of that sign. Where this sign is, it's going to follow that movement. Where these lines are, it's going to follow that movement. So when After Effects is done, it'll basically have 100 of these boxes kind of following the movement of where they're all tracking around the camera. Then what it does is it takes all of those movements, and just like our Angry Birds, stuff that's in the background moves stuff different than stuff that's in the foreground. It calculates how each of these items are moving and creates a camera that replicates what that is doing. Okay? So if my camera just goes from left to right, After Effects should, by the end of this, create a camera for me that goes left to right. And anything that I create 3D-wise and I put it into the scene, it should track it going left to right. Where is my progress? It's still initializing it. All right, so this process might take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to go through this whole process. Again, a reason why you want to make sure you have exactly the kind of footage you want. If I did 35 seconds in here and I'm only going to end up with 4, it's still going to track 35 seconds before it gets to the end of it. There are some other settings under this area that we may have to play with. We may have to say detailed analysis. We may have to click that on. And we may have to choose a different solve method to get better results. Every camera is different. There's no one time it's going to work perfectly. Even inside of After Effects, I've done this before up here where it works perfectly on the same file that a student is using, and it doesn't work. And sometimes it is deleting the footage, re-importing it, redoing that, and then it works. Okay. All right. So now it's gotten to the point where it's actually doing something up here. So it's tracking 139 frames. Now it's solving for the camera, and boom, there it is. Okay. So this is all the stuff that it tracked. Oops. So as I click and drag here, you can see how all these points are moving with the camera. That's exactly what we want. Because if those points are moving with the camera, that means that our camera is locked in. So here's how this works, is I have the camera tracker selected. All of these points seem like they're good. They may not be, but we'll find out. I'm going to find a spot that I want to put something. So let's say that I want to put a piece of text right there in the street. So it just pops up out of the street, whatever. Oops. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to right click. And then I'm going to say create a text and camera. There it goes. So that I click off, and then there's a piece of text here. Now, so you can see it better, I'm going to choose different settings for this. So let me just make this a bit brighter. There it is. Okay, so now I have a piece of text in the middle of my street. So now when I rewind the camera and then I hit play, what we should get is that piece of text looks like it's locked in there. Okay, so now we're getting everything, like the perspective and everything is changing because it's actually matching up with what the camera's doing. Sweet. So that spot at least is good. So when I did that, I clicked on the tracker, I found a spot, I right-clicked, and then I created a text and camera. Because I already have a camera, it doesn't give me the option to create a camera again. So it just has create text. If I switch to my front view and I watch this, you can see the camera doing what the camera in real life was doing. Like that looks like that's what the real camera was actually doing, is going back and forth. If I find a bad spot, because you will find bad spots in here, it'll look like, you can see the bullseye for this is pretty like dead on with the camera. If it's a bad tracker, it'll be like totally a different direction, okay? So as I move around here, and I'm moving between points, not right at a point, I'm moving between points, I should be able to find, unless this is just a magical piece of footage, wait, right, come on. All right, this is a wonderful piece of footage because everything seems like it's working perfectly. You will notice that some stuff does not track correctly, and you will find a weird spot where your bullseye is going in some crazy direction. Nope, this one is like pretty decent. Sweet. All right. So use that piece of footage if you're worried about it. Now let's pretend that that didn't work out good and that something happened. You know, I need to fix it. My track wasn't right when I hit the play button. My text doesn't follow the camera like it should. The text might be off a little bit, whatever. I'll go into the tracker settings and I will choose, maybe I have a setup that I can use for this. So basically with auto detect, it tries to figure out what the camera is doing, but maybe it's solving it the wrong way, right? Especially if something is moving in my scene. All of these scenes should have no movement in them, okay, or very little movement. If I have a character walking across the screen, After Effects doesn't know that that character is not the background. So it'll actually track that character moving too, okay? So I may have to tell it that this is mostly a flat scene, or maybe it's a tripod pan, which is essentially what this is. It just moves from side to side. Usually the auto detect is fine. You may also want to do a detailed analysis, so you can click that. Oh, you can see, yes, it did find the tripod pan. So you may want to click that on. I'm not going to because it'll resolve. And then you may want to also adjust the track point size. So there's no up, down, whatever. You just kind of try something. The bigger that track point size is, typically the bigger the items are in your scene. In this case, I have a lot of small items, so I'd want that to be pretty small, okay? In some of those pieces of footage, this one here, there's a lot of big pieces of footage or a lot of big items in the way. So here, I'd probably make those trackers a bit bigger. And then in the other one, my scene, I would make the trackers smaller, okay? The process is exactly the same no matter which one you do. So just so you can see this on a different one, I'm just going to drag this in here. I'm going to start organizing my stuff. So I'll put that in movies. I'll put these in comps. There we go. I'm going to drag this to a new composition. This one is already 1280 by 720, but we still need to shrink it down to 960 by 540. I still need to scale it. And then I need to find a good section of the footage. So with this one, let's say I go from 3 seconds here. Oops. B, there we go. To about 8. There we go. So I'm going to trim my comp. I'm going to pre-compose. Classroom. There we go. And then I will drop CameraTracker on this one again. And again, it's going to do the same thing. Now, in this case, there isn't a pan movement. I'm actually grabbing the camera and walking down the pathway of these computers in order for this to work. So the 3D solve here, or the auto detect, should get the other method. It should get a typically flat scene or typical one of these things it should pick up. Now, stuff like reflections will also pick up too. So it may actually track those reflections as items that are stable even though they're actually moving. What I mean by that is, as I turn my camera, I'm picking up different reflections, so it may think that those areas are moving, and it may cause some issues on the glass itself. We will find out. Done solving. All right, so let's see, did this solve? Yep, it did solve, okay? So now here, we don't get an error, so I wonder if this didn't solve correctly. We'll find out. There it goes. All right, so we do have some stuff happening there. There's a bit of a spot where all those points are gone, which is concerning. We'll find out. And here you can see, look at how that target is like all over the place, right? It doesn't mean that it's a bad target. It just probably means that some of these points may not be good points. So right here, that looks like it's on the desk. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create my text and camera. Unable to decompose matrix. That means that it's a bad solve. So I will do a detailed analysis, which will then go through and fix that. And again, I may crank this up and crank that up a little bit too, like 125, 125, and see if that gives me anything better. Some of the footage in After Effects is just not going to be good footage. After Effects is limiting as to how much tweaking we can do. There's actually another software called Mocha, right here, that it allows us to actually export the footage out, track inside there, and bring it back. For this assignment, just try to find something that you could work with, okay, just so you can kind of see the process inside After Effects. All right, I'm going to go back to my other footage. All right, just let me turn that off. There it is. Okay. So I have my text here. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to rotate it. It comes in whatever orientation it thinks, right? So it doesn't know that the ground is flat like this. It may think that the ground is like this or like that or whatever. You just have to manually adjust how it's set up. So if I want to rotate this towards me, I'm going to look at this red direction, and that's how it would spin around. So I'm just going to rotate that. Well, apparently not. Maybe just grab this. There we go. And then maybe a little bit in the Y direction, like that. I could also grab position, and very slightly I can adjust the position. If I adjust it too much, what's going to happen is it's not going to be in the right spot. Basically, if I were to, this is just like the Angry Birds one. There we go. If I take a piece of text, it's 3D, I put it right in that same spot there. I'll even move it forward a little bit. There we go. Okay, so it looks like it's on the ground there, but it's not. It's in a totally different spot. As the camera moves, I'm just on point today. I'm just going to lecture every time I have to do something. There we go. This is on the street back here. Now, as I play... I don't have any bad spots in this one. It's just amazingly perfect is what it is. Way back here on top of the building. Alright. I'm just going to make a shape. We'll do that. I'm just going to make a shape right around here. There we go. I'll fill it in. I'll make it 3D. I'll scoot it over. There we go. So, it's perfect. It's amazingly perfect.
How is the U going to get any problems? I just find all of them. I find all the little...
Right. Well, you will find that they don't work the way that they're showing up here. It's just too damn good. That's the problem. Just too damn good. All right. So there, it's in the street. It's still in the street. Yeah. If I put it in the classroom, definitely it wouldn't. It would float around, right? Let's see if this one got done solving yet. Yep, it looks like we have more points in the scene. So now let's try this again. Text and camera. Boom, there it is. So now I can rotate this up. Rotate it that way. There we go. So you can see that that text looks like it's actually on the desk. Let's try adding a different piece of text. And see. And just for fun, where is the position of that? 22? That might be why, 'cause it's like so shallow of an area. Hello again. Alright, for sure I'm just going to drop this into the Z and then like crank it really far back and then scale it really far up. There we go. So now definitely this is not going to work. There we go. Okay, so that says hello right on that screen, and then as I move, there we go, see. So you can see how it's definitely not lined up with that, even though it looks like it's on the screen, because of where it is in actual like 3D space in After Effects, it's not lined up. Good. I can screw up. Just not this one. Okay. So After Effects has a couple things. One, it is a basic 3D environment, okay? And just like we talked about before, it's not actual 3D, but I'm just going to call it 3D. It's 2.5D. So under this renderer here, yours says Classic 3D, okay? Some video cards, depending on what stuff you actually have in your computer, allows you to do fancier stuff. So with this as Classic 3D, I don't get a whole lot of options under here. I get some material options, but I don't get these geometry options because my renderer is not set up. So if I click that and I change it to Ray Trace 3D, that turns on. And then what that allows me to do is, I'm going to set this to full so we can see this, is if I increase, the bevel style here, and then I add some extrusion depth, it'll actually create kind of like 3D text. So it actually will have some thickness to it versus what we just saw a second ago, which is just a piece of paper that's text, okay? Now that doesn't look very exciting because there's no lights in the scene. So I'm going to add a light to the scene. Oops, layer, new light. For this, I'm just going to add a point light. And I'll just leave it like that for now. See how fancy it got? I'm going to just pull that about there. That was good. And then I can go into my geometry settings, and then I can play with the bevel depth. I can play with the bevel hole, which is the center of like the E. And then I can play with the extrusion depth. Okay. Now, if your computer doesn't support Ray Trace 3D, you don't get that ability to do that. Okay, so it's just you don't use it. So for this, I'm not going to use it, but if you have your own laptop, it does support it. Feel free to play around with that. Okay, because it is pretty awesome. Now the text is there. We can change the text. There we go. I have a light in my scene, so you see that it is reading the lighting on there. I can go into my material options, And I can play with some of these, like the ambient. It's not really doing anything because I have a light in the scene right where it's hitting. There we go. I can up the diffuse or down the diffuse if I need to adjust the coloration. I can take the specular intensity, which is that bright spot that's hitting, and knock that down. I can pull the metalness down, and that should dim it a little bit. Maybe not much. There you go. So that's good there. I'm going to rotate it a bit. Not that way. I think I do want to have it like that. But I'm going to have it laying down on the ground. Now you'll see that I'm hitting this point where as I'm trying to rotate this around, it's just not working as nicely as I would like it to. That's one of the reasons After Effects has these orientation and these X and Y and Z rotations. So if the rotation doesn't work, then you can play with the other ones and get those to work. Now your scaling should be fine. It should be able to scale and everything will be happy. So there. So now that says Macomb as we rewind this, and then we hit play. Oops. Does it what? Yep. Yeah, it'll actually have perspective to it. Depending on how close we are to the camera, it'll get, you know, bigger towards the camera and shorter outwards. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to go through and then add some other stuff. So I'm going to grab my tracker. I want to put something over here, so I'm going to right click. Now, I added text last time. Typically, you want to create a null, because what a null allows you to do is basically just have a point where you can just make something and then drop it into that spot. So it makes it a bit easier, okay? So that's a null right there. So I'm going to add something here. And then I'm also going to add something, let's say, yeah, I guess let's say over here. Create a null there. All right, so I can turn that off. All right, so now I'm going to create something. So let's say for this area right here, I just wanted to make like a little car or something like that. Okay, so I can go into Illustrator, draw a car. For this, I'm just going to go to a shape layer and just draw a car out. So I'm going to go to circles. So this is going to be the easiest car to draw in After Effects. There we go. Perfect. It's an anteater car. All right, so now I need to get this car in the same position as that spot right there. So what I do is I make sure it's 3D. There we go. And now we get some of the lighting. I go to where that null is. So I want to replace this null with it. And I just copy the position, go to the shape layers position, and paste it. And now my car will be in that same exact spot as that. And then I can just scale it down. Now you'll see that it turned black because there's no lighting hitting it. So my light, which is right there, just needs to come forward a bit. And maybe up a bit. There might be some drop off on my light. Fall off, yes. So I'm just going to turn that off for now. Whoops. And if all else fails, I'm just going to paste the position of that null where that light is. And then I can move it from there. There we go. So I probably moved it just too far away to even light anything up. Cool. So now I can take this car and maybe just adjust the position slightly. So, perfect. All right. So now I have this car in the spot. And its tracks. Okay. So you can do anything. If I want an animation to play, if I wanted an interface to play, if I wanted whatever to happen, I could create a new solid. Boom, like this. I'm going to pre-compose it. Interface. There we go. And then I'll just create some basic shapes on here. Not on there. Inside here. There we go. And then on this layer, I'll make it 3D. I'll click where I want this to be. And then I'm just going to paste the position for it. And then scale it down. And then rotate it. Okay, so let's say you wanted your title sequence to be playing somewhere. You could actually import your title sequence, take that whole comp, drop it somewhere, and it'll actually show up. You can have your logo all over the place inside one of these areas in here. There's actually a... it couldn't be crystal clear because that would look odd having that clear but everything else kind of fuzzy. So I may need to go to, let's say, my Macomb here, and maybe I want to add a blur to this, just to help kind of get it so that it looks like it's inside there. Okay, so maybe just like 1 pixel blur. Okay, I can also go here and change my mode to maybe an add or maybe a multiply, and now it'll interact with the scene a bit more. So now I'm actually getting, you know, there's that and that. You can also add a shadow catcher. So if I go to my original piece of footage, there, I go to this, I'm going to right click and create a null. Close these. Close that. Okay. And that's my null there. Okay. So I'm going to make a solid. I'm going to paste the position of this. Oops. I didn't make it 3D yet. Here we go. All right. Now under the material options, accepts shadows, accepts lights. Wait, why didn't that work? Shadow catcher. Cast shadows off. Yes. Light transmission. Lights. Oh, because I'm not in the right renderer. Yeah, I guess that doesn't matter then. Never mind. No, that should matter. Try this again in this one. So I should be able to right click, yeah, create shadow catcher. Why isn't that working the other one? It's because I'm in ray traced. Alright, we'll just see what happens here. So I'm going to create an object. I'm going to move its position, move its pivot. It's good. It's 3D, and it's going to be right above this. Light is where? No, my light's really far away. There we go. So now my shadow catcher should be casting a bit of a shadow on there. Let me make sure that my light is casting a shadow, which it is, yes. Let me make sure that my shape is casting a shadow. There we go. And so now this is what's catching the shadow. Yeah, there it is. It says material options, accept shadow, accept lights. Why didn't this other one have that option? Solid. Make it 3D. And this might be something new to this version of After Effects. Or maybe it's just under the ray trace. Accept shadows, yes. Lights on. Because before you could change it on either one, and now I can't. Alright. So I guess the first thing to do is just make a shadow catcher, because it doesn't let you make it after. Before I was able to make one after, and now I can't. Alright, so the shadow catcher is basically just an item that allows us to catch the shadow on the table, so that as it moves, you see that now it looks like there's actually a shadow on the table. And based on the orientation of this, you can see that's going to tweak where that shadow is. So you may have to adjust it to get it lined up perfectly. And then I can adjust the light's intensity here by adding some fall off, adding some diffusion on the shadow, brightness there. And then if I wanted to, now that I have that ball there, I could actually animate the ball's position and the scale. So I'm going to squish the ball like we did. Oops, unlink those. That. Push it down. And as you're animating, you may want to lock your layers. Otherwise, you won't have what I'm getting, which is I keep selecting that background one. And then go up a little bit, move this up. There we go. Let's just see what that looks like. There we go. So now, boing. And you can see how it's interacting with the shadows actually on the ground. So it gives it a little bit more appearance that it's actually in the scene. And then I can just steal these keyframes and copy that and paste it. And then copy these keyframes and paste it. And then steal that whole setup again. And then paste that again. That should be plenty big. There we go. Sweet. Okay, so you'll add 3 different items into your scene. Use a variety of things. Don't just drop 3 items in there, just like, you know, a plane or a piece of text. Actually make items that make kind of sense in the scene. Whether it is just a title in one area and maybe something animated in another one. Like if you drew an animated car, you could have that animated car just driving along the road there, right? Cool. Sir.
Can I take one of my other projects from intro to visual video and editing? Can I take one of the scenes from there and use that?
Yes, you can. Yep.
Does it have to be a specific file, like
Well, these are just QuickTime movies,
okay.
right? So as long as it'll open in After Effects, which I'm sure it would, then you should be fine.
I just want to make sure because I still have all that stuff, and I was like, well, I got a couple scenes I could use in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of that is just, even if you video edit, you want to be able to tweak it afterwards.
Yeah.
So you'll add your stuff inside here. I'll go through some more stuff on there. And then eventually what you'll do at the very end of that is obviously add your title sequence. But I drop this into another comp. And then maybe I want to add some other stuff inside this as well. Like maybe I'm going to duplicate that and put a vignette on this, right? I believe I've shown the vignette stuff before. So I just added a mask. I'm expanding it. There we go. Again, I could also add a adjustment layer. Oops. And then maybe add a color correction to this. So maybe I'll knock down the hue and saturation. I'll add a curves to it. Now all of this you want to do after the fact of all your other stuff being done. Because what it does is if I try to do this before, all of these color adjustments would affect how it tracks and where the things go. So you don't want to do this at the beginning, you want to do it at the end. Also, any vignettes or anything else will help tie this guy in here a little bit better than not having those things. Even adding in, you know, there is a bit of noise inside this footage. He might be crystal clear. He's not in this case, but he might be. I may want to add some noise on top of this as well. Not a lot, just maybe like 2% maybe. Right. In our other class that we do use this footage for, we actually replaced stuff on the screens, and we actually removed stuff like the keyboards, and there's a pencil in one of them someone removed, and there's a lamp that's in the way back that someone removed, and there's a stain on the floor someone removed. Okay, so there's lots of stuff that you can do to a piece of footage like this. It's just a matter of what do you want to do. That's cute. Cool. So when you get done with your Angry Bird, you can start on this one.